Hi everybody, it's Russ from My Hammers 11. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, hitting the bell icon so you're notified of any time we put new content up. Obviously, we have videos going up daily, but sometimes 2-3 times a day. I don't want you to miss any of these great guests we've got coming up. So please make sure you hit that bell icon so you're made aware as soon as you put new videos on. We've got some amazing guests this week, including today's guest. One of only, I think, 5 West Ham players who played in the FA Cup final, won the FA Cup in 1980, and then were part of the famous 85-86 season, which I was absolutely astounded by. He played 368 times for the club, 41 goals. He debuted in 1976, I think, for the first team. It's Geoff Pike. Hi, Geoff. How are you?
Hi, Russ. I'm very well, thank you.
Bearing
up under the strain of being locked down?
Exactly. Have you taken up any new skills or anything? You know, I mean, I was talking to Martin Allen the other day, and he's done a bit more gardening than he usually does.
Well, we have done a bit more gardening. I've been doing a bit of DIY, catching up with some stuff that needed to be done. But one of the, I suppose you do some random things, don't you, when you're in this sort of situation. And my daughter is quite a talent at poetry. And she started to do some poems related to the situation that we're in.
Oh, wow.
As a consequence of that, we all sort of joined in. At the moment, I've got a booklet that's 20-odd pages long with poems from my daughter, myself, my youngest son, my grandchildren have contributed, and a friend of ours, because our eldest lad, Anthony, who was born 3 weeks after the cup final in 1980, was 40 last weekend.
Yeah, of course.
On the 31st of May. So there's been some poems going around to celebrate his 40th birthday as well. So it is random, but you know, it's quite amusing when every now and again you get a new one come through on the WhatsApp group.
On the WhatsApp group, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, there's 2 things I've random that I've started. One is a YouTube channel, hence why we're on it. And second one is the ukulele. I started for some reason. I started to play the ukulele, and obviously the first song I learned was "I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles." You know, it's just had to be done.
Of course. Well,
I'll probably be on when we all get back, when the 60,000 get back on the pitch. I'll do the halftime entertainment. I think, you know, sort of proper George Foreman's George Formby, not George Foreman. I'm not going to box that. But I mean, I know it's a bit of a bugger when it comes to birthdays, isn't it? Particularly a 40th birthday. You know, trying to celebrate it.
It is, but you know, it was in the situation where our esteemed leader, Mr. Johnson, suggested that on the Monday we was able to go and visit people, you know, outside of our or within the family, but you know, social distance. You know, 6 people maximum. Yeah. And it was 24 hours before, so we cheated a little bit.
Yeah.
But we drove all the way to Bristol because he lives in Bristol with his wife and daughter. And we arrived. We spent 3 hours sitting in the garden, social distancing. Yeah. Had a glass of Pimm's with him to celebrate his birthday, and he was. I think he was visibly shocked and emotional when we arrived. You know, so it was. I mean, what my wife and I did, we a few months back, pre-Christmas, I got contacted by someone from the PFA about selling any old football shirts that I didn't want.
Sure.
So I offered our 3 children, our 3 kids, an opportunity to choose one of these shirts if they wanted before I sold them on. Yeah. Which I didn't do in the end, but he chose. Anthony chose a shirt that I wore in 1976 out in America, playing in the NASL in bicentennial year, and it's a shirt that I played in against New York Cosmos when Pele was playing for them.
Oh wow!
So I've got a photograph that sits proudly on my in my dining room of myself and another one of my teammates plus Pele in possession of the ball, and I got that copied and we put that in the frame as well. And then when we got there, my wife and I hid behind the frame because it was quite big, and opened the back gate and started singing happy birthday to him. So it was quite a shock for him, and you know, but and quite emotional, but we had a lovely 3 hours, and then and then got in the car and drove back home again.
Yeah, it's the trouble, isn't it? Yeah, I know. I've had two. May's a busy time for me. I have my wife's birthday and my daughter's birthday, so yeah, we had to sort of be creative, don't you, a little bit? So yeah, so my daughter had a social distancing party for some of her friends on the drive. Moved all the cars, got an ice cream man to turn up and stuff, and yeah, and my wife we converted the back garden into like the outdoor cinema, but like I bought a projector and stuff, but you got to make doing it. And I think actually it's, in a weird way, there's been sort of more creativity, as you said, that type, going and it's surprising your son. You know, you could have gone for a meal, you know, in easier times. It's a lot more effort, but it pays more. It's more meaningful, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it was a similar situation in April with, because my wife's birthday was in April.
Oh,
and my youngest lad, who lives across the road, or sort of 10 minutes away, his three children, our three grandchildren, got 3 pieces of flip chart paper together and wrote and did a drawing and put happy birthday on there. And then they came round and rung the doorbell. Had already put balloons up around the outside, and my wife answered the door, and they played Stevie Wonder's Happy Birthday as loud as they possibly could on the car radio, and the kids were standing there singing Happy Birthday with this banner. So we ended up sitting on the driveway, and then other people turned up, and next door neighbours were giving her cards, which they'd never done before. One of the neighbours bought her a bottle of Prosecco. You know, and everybody, the whole community has become. I mean, we're in a situation now where hopefully this weekend we're going to do a quiz with the neighbours on our side of the road and on the road opposite. When it was VE Day, we was out there till nearly midnight, sitting in the road, social distancing, you know, having a glass of wine, and it was. So we've created a community out of a community that was already there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, no,
but
definitely.
We're communicating with them much more, and as a consequence of that, we're going to hopefully do this quiz at the weekend where we're all going to sit outside in our driveways and do a quiz. So it could be quite interesting if it's raining. But
I've heard a cul-de-sac doing a I can't remember where it might have actually been on a TV show, so I mentioned it. But it was a cul-de-sac, and they were doing bingo, and they had a guy at one end like one of those loud hailers calling out all the bingo numbers, and everyone had the cards. Same type of thing. It's amazing. It is amazing, and that's how this channel started. You know, it was like the sense of the community, the West Ham community. Everyone talks about you know the West Ham family, but this is an epitome of that, you know, in terms of talking to fans all over the world about their memories of West Ham, and now talking to more and more players like yourselves, ex-players, about their memories of playing for West Ham and the players that they enjoyed playing with. And it's just snowballed because of this sort of West Ham community feeling. Sure. And when we all get back, when that will be, I don't know, the 60,000 turn up to London Stadium and Bubbles is played and everyone sings along, will be lovely. So I think football is almost secondary to the sort of the camaraderie and the friendship amongst the West Ham lot. That's the way it's coming through. I've heard people doing. There's this one guy I interviewed the other day. He's doing a Zoom party with all of his mates he sits around, these season ticket holders, to watch the Wolves game and stuff like that. And it's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So for you, Geoff, obviously, you know, massive period at the club. You know, as I said, over 360 games for the club in total. The first question I ask all West Ham ex-players is why West Ham? Why? And obviously you're at Thurrock, you're at Gideon Park. I live in Gideon Park now, but you're at Thurrock, you're at Gideon Park Rangers, and then obviously you went into West Ham. Why West Ham? Why?
Well, originally, and it's quite a long, not drawn out story, but there's a number of things that contribute to it. Sure. My mum's parents and her brother and her sister all lived in near Victoria Park. Yeah. So they were around the corner from Upton Park, and they were always West Ham fans. So I suppose that's where it initially the seed was initially sown.
Yeah.
But then what happened was my mum and dad moved out of Clapton and moved out to South Ockenden in Essex.
Yeah.
And so I went. The school I went to had a teacher called Mr. Davis, and God rest him. I went to his funeral a few years back now. But he was the instigator of the whole thing, really, because as an 8-year-old, I was playing in the school football team, but I was playing on the left wing. Now, whether he put me on the left wing, keep me out of the way or not, I'm not 100% sure. But it was. But what he did was he wrote to West Ham and said, "You need to see this boy." So I then got contacted by West Ham, and they said, "Come down on this particular date on a Tuesday, for example."
Yeah.
Because the young players trained on a Tuesday and Thursday evening. Go down to Chadwell Heath. So my dad took me down there, and the very first person I spoke to was John Lyle.
Wow.
Because John was a youth team coach at the time. And he asked me my name, and I said who I was, and he asked me how old I was, and I think I was 9 or 10 at that particular time. Well, it was 10 because I think it was 66 when I went there. And he said, well, you're a little bit young, but join in while you're here, which is what I did. And at the end of it, he said, make sure you're back here Thursday. So I went back. I then, because my parents were both working, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, etc., I used to have to get 2 or 3 buses from South Ockenden to get to Chadwell Heath. You know, nowadays you wouldn't expect that to happen from a child of that age. And then it got to about sort of 15 years of age. And I've been at the club for quite some time. And I got invited to go for a trial at Ipswich. And it was a week's trial, and they were putting us up, overnight in a B&B around the corner from the main ground. And at the end of this week, they played a game on the main pitch. And at the end of the game, Bobby Robson, again, God rest his soul, came up to me and said, I'd like to sign you as an apprentice. So I said, I'm not sure. I said, because I'm at West Ham at the moment, and I don't know what's going to go on with them. He said, well, if you sign for me, he said, you'll be in my first team within 18 months. So for a 15-year-old to be told that by, someone of Bobby Robson's standing is, whoa, hold on a minute. Yeah. So I came back home that day, and 2 days later, I rang a fellow you probably have heard of, a fellow called Wally St. Pierre.
Yeah.
Wally was a chief scout at the time, and I rang him up and I said, Wally, do you know what's happening? Am I going to get an apprenticeship or not? Because Ipswich want to sign me. And he said, I'll ring you back. And the phone rang 10 minutes later, and Wally said, yeah, we're going to sign you. So obviously the input of Bobby and all the Ipswich thing instigated West Ham signing me. I mean, Bobby rang me 3 times that following week personally to say what's happening, because he wanted to sign me that much. So it was one of those things where, it was in the balance at one particular time, but there was only one outcome in my eyes, and that was West Ham if they wanted to sign me. And that's how it all came about, really.
And the rest is history, as they say, isn't it? I mean,
hopefully.
Yeah. And then obviously, from then, you went to America for on loan for a bit. I'm so not new to it, but I'm learning all this. How did that happen? Because obviously, if you're from South Ockenden, then you're off to the States.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was at the club, and I was sort of I've been playing in the reserves, etc., and that's where I had the experience of playing with Bobby Moore and Geoff Hurst. As a young player, playing in the reserves just prior to Bobby going to Fulham and Geoff going to Stoke. So had that magnificent experience of playing in the same team as them two. And then at the end of the season, 1975-76 season, I just got a phone call out of the blue from John, and he said, would you be interested in going out to the States and playing out there? So I said, well, why not? One of the reasons was they were doubling my wages, which helped, but it wasn't the be all and end all. But I flew out to the States. I got there the day they played a game, and I watched the game, didn't play, but then they played a game 3 days later. That was my first game, and that was against Pele and the Cosmos.
Wow.
So you think, well, how much better can this get? You know, spent all summer there, came back, played again for West Ham during the 76-77 season, sort of in and around the first team a little bit, but not much. And then got asked if I wanted to go back again, which I did do. Went back and spent another 3 months out there playing against people like George Best and Eusebio and Beckenbauer. You know, and you're going through all these names and they're legends of the game. And to have the experience of doing that, I'm sure it's shaped my my thoughts and the way I play. You know,
definitely.
Without sort of going, you need to do this. There was certain things that probably had an influence on that.
Of course.
And then I came back, and the 70. My wife and I were getting married in '78, and it was it was the option for her to come with me in '77 and spend 3 months out in America, or stay at home and, you know, we'd save up, and which is what we did, and to buy our house and get married in '78. And during the 77-78 season, around Christmas time, Ron Greenwood called me in his office, and he said, bearing in mind that I hadn't had a break for 3 years, he said, you better buck your ideas up, otherwise I won't renew your contract at the end of the season. Oh, thanks, Ron. That's marvellous. You know, I mean, you know. So, but what happened was then I did make my debut that post-Christmas, I think, of that time.
Yeah.
And I came on for half a game against Birmingham in place of a fella called Yilmaz Orhan, who was playing injured in the first place. And then I made my full debut against Spurs, and we beat Spurs 5-2, I think, at home.
Yeah.
You know, so it sort of blossomed from there. And then it was like an in and out process, Russ, where, you know, I was in and around the first team, playing on the odd occasion, having little runs in the team, but not establishing myself in the team.
Yeah. And
then obviously we got to the situation around 1980 with the cup final. And Paul Allen had emerged onto the scene, you know, as a central midfield player, and was doing really well. So it was again a similar situation. But then we played the game. I can't remember. It might have been Charlton or something like that. Just prior to the last game before we played against the cup final, and I scored in the game. And someone said to me that might have given you your ticket into the team, and I'm going, well, I don't know. And then John announced the team on the Friday lunchtime, and I was playing, which was not I suppose it was a shock, but it wasn't a shock. It was, you know, I was hoping, you know, that was the case. I was in and around it. I was, you know, fingertips type thing. You know, am I going to get in the team or not? And I felt sorry for Paul Brush, who'd been playing, you know, most of the season at left back, with Frank playing right back and Ray playing in midfield. But then John reverted back to Ray playing at right back. Frank went back to left back, leaving the midfield space open for myself. And obviously, John made the right choice because we won the game. So.
And I mean, you know, I've never experienced as a West Ham fan anything like what happened in 1980. Obviously, you know, we won the Intertoast Cup in '99. That's the only silverware we've won since. I know you probably get bored to death being asked that question, but what was it like coming back, like having obviously won the FA Cup? Obviously, you got the euphoria of Wembley, you know, winning it must have been your career highlight, so to speak, because
Absolutely.
Well, you know, it's a pity when you're a young lad, you want to win the FA Cup, don't you? As a kid, you know, you don't necessarily.
It was the ultimate, Russ. It was the ultimate. You know, that and winning the league title, and we wasn't in a position to win the league title, but it was West Ham were always associated with FA Cups and league cups because of the previous, you know, sort of 64, 75, etc., etc. And you know, it was something that West Ham fans are looking forward to on a you know, an almost seasonal basis. You know, we might not do very well in the league, but what we'll do hopefully is do well in the cups. And I've said this before, and you know, I'll say it again. I find it really, really strange that West Ham don't always play their strongest team when they're playing in the FA Cup and the League Cups, because in reality, that's probably the only opportunity they've got of winning any silverware, but they don't seem to put that much emphasis on it, which I find strange.
I think it's
If I
it's
was
a
a West Ham
historic.
fan, I'd find it disappointing as well.
Yeah, but I think it's a historic thing, isn't it? I mean, you've got a case where I think there's lots of. I think most teams, unfortunately, sort of bottom half teams, so to speak, which is what we are at the moment. Realistically, the Premier League is so important to stay in that you're right. It's almost second, but you're saying that you're right. I mean, the teams that do have a go are usually the ones that actually and put a strong side in. Are usually the ones that end up winning and get into the final. I mean, you look at. I mean, obviously, I think Villa did well this year and stuff like that, and it's particularly in the League Cup final. Obviously, a loss, but you're right. I think it's for West Ham fans. But we're realistic as well, aren't we? We're never going to win the league. At the moment, it's how quick can we get to 40 points? That's sort of our season objective, and then we go on from there. Which eventually, it might be a case where we're looking, a bit more into making sure we're finishing 7th and 6th and stuff like that. But
and I think that's where you're right. It's it's where West Ham are at the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
And what it's we've gone through all this process to get here, and obviously the change of the stadium, etc., and going through that massive change. It's where West Ham are at the moment. Who knows what's going to happen in 10 years' time? No one knows. So hopefully it's creating a foundation for to build on. But is it? That's
I mean,
I'm hopeful that that's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
I personally, I mean, I love the fact that I played in the 1980 Cup final. It's the last team that West Ham ever won. So when we come up to the 40th anniversary, which we've just done recently, people are still celebrating that.
Yeah.
But I'd hate to go to my grave knowing that West Ham had never won it again.
Yeah. No, I get you.
And I just it would be tragic if that was the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I think not only the FA Cup, but obviously the 85-86 season. I think when I was interviewing Tony Gale, he said something like he was talking to Tony Cottee, and Tony Cottee said there was something like 17 records that season's team still held, club records, like most away wins, most away, most goals scored by partnership, things like that. And again, the same thing, it's great, but that season 85-86 is still celebrated, finishing sort of third and never sort of replicating.
If I move to the side, you can probably see that picture in the background.
Yeah, I can. Yeah. That's what triggered not just 80, but the 85-86 stuff, because that was such an incredible season as well. And obviously you played 10 or so games in that season as well. So, and again,
it was, I got injured, and it was an injury that was, funnily enough, Billy Bonds had a similar type of injury. It's to do with the pubic bone and, the pelvis. So what had happened was I'd actually managed to tear a hole in my stomach muscle wall, which was about the size of a 50p piece. And as a consequence of that, they couldn't pull the muscle together because it would have restricted movement. So they had to put a scaffolding, like a mesh, and sew a mesh in there. And then I had to do certain exercises to build the muscle back up. So the mesh was like a scaffold for the muscle to go back over. And that took quite some time. And while that was going on, Neil Orr, who was playing in my position, had basically established himself in the side, and the team was doing very well. Yeah. Having said that, during that season, I still get reminded about the header at Old Trafford. Yeah. In the FA Cup replay up at Old Trafford. So, and I'm very grateful that people still remember that. And whenever I go to any West Ham events, people talk about that, and I'm extremely grateful that they still want to talk about that. So it was an experience. It was we do have a laugh. I did say to Mark Ward, and I got interviewed after the game by the television, because we was on the TV, and the commentator said about the goal, and both Mark and I had decided before we go in that that we was going to tell a pack of lies, and we went in and said that we've been practicing it on the training ground on a daily basis. But what actually happened was Mark miscued it, and I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. So but we did have a bit of a giggle with that one.
Yeah.
And when I see Waldy every now and again, we still laugh about that.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. And I mean, as I said, you're one of, I think it's five Hammers who did both, who in sort of in the modern day, so to speak, sort of history of West Ham, the two standouts of 1980 and obviously 85, 86, and obviously you, Parksy, Ray Stewart, Alvin and Dev, those are the five. And that's an incredible achievement. And it's something which I didn't realise until I started, Wikipediaing you a little bit more, Geoff, going in and looking at the games, and it's an incredible accolade. And again, it shows the difference in the modern game compared to sort of that era where you wouldn't get a player hanging around for 5 years. If you get 3 years out of him, you've got a good shout nowadays.
Yeah, and it's sad, really, because you don't see testimonials. If you do now, the players are earning so much money now that they generally donate the money to charity, which is fine. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. I had a testimonial, and it was to supplement my personal financial situation. I needed it, because it was, But having said that, Russ, I still believe, and again, you get the question asked every time, don't you wish you were playing nowadays? If it was purely financial, you'd have to say yes. Of
course.
But I think that I played in what I would call the golden era of the game. Because there would be a number of players. I mean, someone like Tony Curry, for example. I remember playing against him at Leeds. Legend in the game. Playing it. There was a number of people, and you could probably say there was at least one in each team in the first division, which it was then, that you'd pay money to go and see.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not so sure that's the case now.
No, I agree, and I think it's a generational thing as well, isn't it? So, and I think for in terms of West Ham as well, looking at West Ham specifically, I think there's a period. I mean, obviously the 80s were such a period for great football, but great characters, and I think that's what West Ham fans love more. Yeah, you can be Dimitri Payet and be the best player, but you're a horrible character, and people don't think of you that. Whereas your era, as you said, Waldy, Macca, TC, that sort of group, Parksy out, everyone was a character. Ray, they were all characters. And then probably sort of the mid-90s period as well, we had Bish and Monks and even Razor and people like that. And from then on, the characters have gone out of the game. You don't get those characters. It's almost too professional now, football. And
I agree. It is almost too professional, but it's driven by finance.
Exactly.
And it's
You're
not
totally
driven
right.
by the love of the game anymore.
Yeah.
We because of the situation we was in respect of the 40th anniversary, there was a number of events that we was hopefully going to be getting together with. Sure. And we did do a couple before pre-Christmas.
Yeah.
And we walk in the room and everybody's there. Apart from I think Alvin couldn't make it on one occasion, and Frank Lampard couldn't make it on one occasion, but apart from that, everybody else is there. And we walk in the room, and it's just like it's never changed.
Yeah,
and I think that's the mark of where we are now with the game, because I still speak to Parksy fairly regularly. I'll speak to Dev fairly regularly. I'll speak to other people. Ray rings up every now and again.
Yeah.
Alvin lives around the corner to me, and we bump into each other on the odd occasion. But there's still a camaraderie there.
Definitely.
And it's like when we walk back into the room and it's 40 years on. We're still it's like walking back into the changing room again. With a bunch of people. Yeah. Whereas I'm not so sure that happens now with the players, because it's multicultural. And multilingual, and sometimes you're in a dressing room with a group of people who you can't understand a word they're talking about.
That's true.
So it's really difficult to build that camaraderie.
Yeah, Yeah, no, I agree, and you're right, and I think, as I said, you get 3 years out of a player if you're doing well, and also a manager, you get 3 or 4 years out of it, you're doing well as well, and I think that's the same true. I mean, the players. I mean, you in sort of the Gailey era, so to speak, you had a testimonial almost every year.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's a bit like mates, isn't it? You don't see your mates for your best mates. You don't see them for like a year, 6 months, maybe you see them at Christmas. But then when you get together, like you said with the dressing room, it was like you just press pause and then you carry on, and that's what I get through talking to the players in your era and the players in sort of Bish's era and stuff like that. It's that camaraderie. Right. Anyway, let's talk about players in a bit more detail, because I think as I said, the whole idea of this channel, it's lovely chatting about all the memories, which is phenomenal, but it's about talking about the players which meant something to the fans, and so they tend to. They talk about that they're, whether it's their best 11 or whatever like that. Now, for ex-players, I like to see if we can put a team of 11 together of players that you enjoyed playing with the most. Now, I'm not saying it's not always, he's better than him. But, if you had to pick, if you had a gun to your head, Geoff, who would you pick for your team? That's the type of thing we do. And so we try and keep it to a 4-4-2 just because I'm not very good at video editing more than anything. But I have learned all these new positions, which I never knew when I was talking to more experienced fans, like, inside half and left forward and stuff like that, which is it's a catharsis. Exactly, and it's a learning process. So for the
W formation, they used to call it the W formation.
Oh, you did that? Yeah. I get you. I'm learning all this. It's brilliant. It's really cathartic. It really sort of like, because I feel a little bit. I mean, it's like when people start learning history of their country and their family. I'm a little not blasé to the sort of the earlier period, but I don't know as much as everyone else. I know the modern period because that's when I was born. But it's really nice. I love history, but I love going. I'm not saying your history, but I love going back in time and finding that stuff out. But in terms of the Pike 11, who would be in goal? I could probably guess who your goalie would probably be, to be honest.
Well, I played in the same team as Mervyn Day.
You did, yeah.
And I played in the same team as Bobby Ferguson. But Phil Parks, which is probably the one you're thinking of, was probably was easily, if no disrespect to the other two, easily the best in my eyes. And in a way, he was around at the wrong time. Because in reality, he should have played more for England, but you had Ray Clements and Peter Shilton around at the time as well. And England seemed to produce top quality goalkeepers at that particular time, and there was a huge amount of goalkeepers that were coming through. But Parksy was different class for us, and it was synonymous in the cup run at West Brom when we went up there and got absolutely battered, and he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, exactly. And that's someone else pointed that up as well. A fan about that away. No one really talks about that, but that he like 15, 16 like saves that day or something like that. World class saves. Yeah, no, Parksy's in. Yeah, I could probably nail that down to start off with when you was talking to Geoff. Let's go left back again. I could probably guess left back, but who would you have left back?
Funnily enough, when you contacted me the other day and you said about this, I was trying to think to myself about, I think a lot of the other positions are fairly straightforward, but left back is the one that's probably going to be the one that's a bit sort of more difficult.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, I get
that. Each of the ones that I played with, for example, have got different qualities. So you got Georgie Paris, for example, who played left back. He was, he played with enthusiasm, massive enthusiasm, and I'd run around all over the place and do what he needed to do, and et cetera, et cetera. Steve Wolford was like the epitome of a laid back left back. He was sort of, oh well, okay, give it to me if you really want to, type thing. But when you look at it from a defensive perspective, then probably Frank is probably the best that I played with. I never played with Julian Dix. I'd only seen him on a few occasions. But if I'm honest, I think Frank was extremely reliable. And bearing in mind that he started as a right back and broke his leg and had to adapt and turned himself into a left full back, and ended up playing for his country as well, or certainly been in the squad. So it'd have to be Frank, I think.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, as you said. I mean, yeah, you're fortunate to play some great guys. Obviously, Georgie Paris, Steve as well. You know, you had some good left backs you played with, and I think I know what you mean by Frank. That's a good shout. Okay, let's go the right back position. Who do we have on right back position?
Right, now this is difficult because it links to the centre back situation as well.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so Ray was different class. When he came to the club as a youngster, he was like a breath of fresh air. Couldn't understand a word he was saying.
Still can't.
But he was, his passion for the game was incredible. But Billy Bonds came to West Ham from Charlton as a right back and got converted to a centre back. And then that's where the issue arises, because I've got 3 centre backs now. Do I go with Ray at right back and then get rid of one of the centre backs, or do I go Bill at right back and then have Alvin and Bobby Moore as the 2 centre backs? Because irrelevant to the balance of the team, we're just talking about the quality of the player. Because obviously, you probably wouldn't play Alvin and Bobby Moore in the same team because they're both not dissimilar players. They're not out and out defenders as such. They're cultured defenders in my eyes. I'll probably go with Bill at right back and with Alvin and Bob.
Yeah, I mean,
I got asked once, Russ, sadly, just after Bob had passed away, to speak about him at a charity boxing event. And Frank Lampard and Harry Redknapp were actually in the audience. And I said, well, surely you want them to speak because they've got more memories of Bob than what I have. But the fellow insisted, so I went up. And one of the things that I spoke about Bob was around his humility.
Yeah.
Where at Upton Park, where the players used to park in the car park, in the school car park there, and then walk through the gates and walk through the double doors into the main reception area.
Yeah.
There was a barrier on the left-hand side, a metal barrier, which the fans couldn't get past pre the game, but they were allowed in afterwards. And Bob used to stand, when he came to the games, he used to stand just inside that barrier. And every time every player that walked through there, he would make a point of coming up and shaking your hand and wishing you all the best. He was the captain of the England team that won the World Cup in 1966.
Yeah.
He didn't need to come up to Geoff Pike and say, all the best, Geoff. So it wasn't necessarily about just the player. It was about the man himself as well.
I get that.
I've never to be in a situation where I played with him and then be in the situation where I've had not dealings, but interaction with him. I can't say anything more positive about Bob himself. And if I was in a situation where I could to name the best team with the best players, he would always be in there. He'd be number 1.
Yeah. Exactly. And that's what's great, because also you see it's a generational thing as well. And that's why for the fans, I put a sort of a caveat on that they have to be alive to have seen him play, because everyone to a man would put Bob in just because he's the legend and he'd be the number 1 on any West Ham fan's dream 11. But it would have to be. But what's nice is when I talk to the more experienced fans, I call them, who saw Bob play. Experience, Geoff. They say the stories they say, of Bob as a player, and you said as a man, really, because you're right. He didn't have any humility. As you said, just to he won the bloody World Cup, and he was and then to be partnered with Alvin and Billy. That is probably and if you had to say like West Ham trilogy, you've got almost the West Ham centre back trilogy there, haven't you, in terms of Bobby Moore, Harvey Martin, and Billy Bonds. But I mean, I think that's probably, if anyone had to write their dream 11, that would be the back 4 and back 5, I'd say, including the goalkeeper already. And you had the privilege. And you had the privilege of playing.
and when I see Bill now, when we do these events, he's very humble. He does what he does, and then when he played, he used to come in or play the game, and he was the first one to leave. He never stayed. He wanted to get home to his family, which is all credit to him. But but it's to being he said something to me one day, and we played in a charity football match over at Thurrock. Yeah. And he played in the charity football match, and I played. And my parents, God rest them, when they were alive, they lived around the corner from there, and they come over to watch it. And at the end of the game, we've gone up into the bar, as you do, and you're having a glass of wine or a beer or whatever. And Bill come over, and we was chatting away, and he went, "Do you know something?" And he turned around to my mum and dad, and he said, "Do you know something?" He said, "I didn't realise what a good passer Geoff was until today." And you go, "Oh, thanks, Bill. I've played so many games with you, but you didn't realise how good I was until we played a bleeding charity game." But it was the sentiment more than anything else, and the reference to it. So I suppose that's synonymous with the way I played and the way the fans potentially saw me. I was there, but I wasn't there, if that makes sense. I did the job, and it was one of those things where you probably didn't get as recognised as the Trevor Brookings of this world or the Alan Devonshires of this world. But we during that period of time, around 80, 81, when we won the Cup, and the following season when we got promoted, I firmly believe that was probably one of the strongest West Ham teams, because the following season, when we got promoted to the First Division, at Christmas we was top of the league. Yeah. And we was absolutely flying. But as per usual, post Christmas, the decorations come down, and so do West Ham. So.
And that was something my granddad got as well. It would always say, and I never really understood it. And then going back and looking at all the old videos and stuff, it was like, okay, I can understand where that sort of it's been in play. But no, I know what you mean, and it's true. I think. Now in the nostalgia era, so to speak, my sort of education, so to speak, started sort of mid 90s, early 90s when I was obviously old enough to go and watch football. And I was the same. I didn't appreciate some players. Going back now, I appreciate them more. So it's like when I interviewed Tim Breaker the other day, he was a name on the team sheet when I was there, because it was about Ian Bishop and Trevor Morley and David Speedy and the goal getters and Clive Allens. But actually, and I said to him, I said, "Look, I've got a new fan." So this might sound really, I have to make an honest, I didn't appreciate you as much as I do now in terms of what you did. And that's the same with you, Geoff. I think you're right. It's like, people get and again, that's the importance of these sort of videos, is to record memories of players that some players really dear to their heart, but others players will remember because, memories fog and stuff. And totally. I totally get it. It's funny, Bill, going to you saying that like how many years after. Right, let's carry on. Let's go left midfield. Who do you have left midfield then, Geoff?
Right, now this is where again midfield becomes a slight problem, because I've got four names for the midfield in a 4-4-2 sort of scenario. Yeah. But if we adapted that slightly and said we're going to play 4-3-3, then it becomes a little bit more difficult, more easier for me to
make it easier. 4-3-3. We'll go 4-3-3 then. Let's go 4-3-3.
If we said the three midfield players for me would be, certainly Trevor would have to be in that group. Yeah. Certainly Martin Peters would have to be in that group. And also, I would go with Ronnie Boyce.
Wow, what three?
Ron, I think, I suppose I relate to Ron a little bit. He scored the winning goal in the 1964 Cup final. Yep. But he sort of took me under his wing when he was first team coach, and I was playing in and around the first team, and he had a lot of words of wisdom. And I was fortunate enough to play with him in the reserves and in his last game before he retired. And Ron was a very similar situation, similar to myself, I suppose. He was very underrated, but was an absolutely vital cog in the wheel. You know, because Ron was an excellent footballer, but no one really took that much notice of him. And then you've obviously got Trevor, who will do his bits going forward. And how can you leave Martin Peters out of the team? You know, because you know, you could go down the route of Bish. You know, you can go down the route of Steve Lomax.
Yeah.
You know, and all those people, you know, in and around the era afterwards, and the Martin Allens of this world, for example. You know, absolute lunatic, but you know, does what he does and does it really well.
Yeah.
But there was a calmness about the three of them.
Yeah.
And you know, in the hustle bustle of a game of football, you need people with a calm head, and you know, they were synonymous to that. And I did have the distinct pleasure of playing with Mark as well as he possibly can. But so I've been very fortunate. I've played with all three West Ham World Cup winners, you know, at some point, you know, so I can't leave Martin out.
No.
So that's my three, I'm afraid.
That's great. Well, no, I'll have to figure it out how to do it, but I don't care, Geoff. I'll figure it out. Let's go up front. Who's your three up front then?
Well, now, so on the left-hand side, I'd have to play Dev.
Yeah.
So he was very much an attacking player. Whilst he did all his work defensively, in that sort of system, it would give him the license to do more going forward. And I'd like to think that was the case. And then you've got the strikers as such.
Yeah.
It's difficult, this one, because when you're playing with three, do you have a central one as a target player, or do you play with different types of players, or do you get them to rotate their positions based around what their talents are?
Yeah.
I mean, you could look at TC and you look at Frankie Mack and say, well, they in 85, 86, they were unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, and as a pair, they were terrific. You know, so you probably need to go with them and with Dev on the left-hand side, I would have thought. Yeah. But then I'd go, well, I'd have David Cross on the bench.
Yeah.
You know, because you might need him at some point to throw a spanner in the works.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you know, I mean, when was it? I'm just trying to think now. It was, I'll tell you when it was. It was 75... 76 season.
Yeah.
We had John Radford played for us, and he'd come over from Arsenal. Never scored a goal for us, but what a fantastic player. I've just thought of someone else actually. Now I've come to think of it. Pop Robson.
Yeah.
Probably need to put Pop Robson in there somewhere. So I think probably to get some variety in the team, I'd have to leave TC out, I'm afraid.
TC out of Pop Robson. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I mean, Pop was brilliant. He was absolutely first class. You know, there's numerous people. I mean, I'm omitting, you know, Alan Taylor. He scored 2 goals in the FA Cup final, 2 goals in the semi-final. Yeah. I'm omitting Graham Padden, God rest him, who was fantastic on the left-hand side of midfield. Keith Robson, who was an absolute lunatic, but, you know, had a presence about him on the field. You know, so it is really difficult. So I'm basing this selection on people that I've had the experience of playing with or being in and around, you know, and rather than players that I haven't, because I can't comment on them without playing with or against them.
You've got, exactly. You've got like a point of reference, haven't you? You don't, it makes perfect. And that's the idea. Because obviously, you know, I think we interviewed John Hartson, and you know, he obviously wouldn't necessarily put in his team was all like Paul Kitson and stuff like that, because again, those are the players he's played with. So
absolutely,
that's the whole idea. Geoff, man, it's been absolutely fascinating and amazing, and a real privilege talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. I said half an hour. It's been an hour, but I said half an hour. But it's been lovely.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a pleasure, because, you know, when you get into this situation, and it's an opportunity for me as an individual to express my opinions about certain things, and sometimes you know, whether they're like to dislike, but to actually have a chat about the game is, you know, it's is what we live for, really.
Exactly, and
because,
everyone has an opinion. It's football,
absolutely.
and that's the idea of the 11s. Everyone has an opinion. We talk to some of the younger players, some of the younger fans, rather, not the players, but younger fans, and obviously they don't have a point of reference to include,
No,
Trevor
absolutely.
Brookings. So it will be people that it will be Pyettes, and it will be Scotty Parkers and things like that. And that's the idea of it. Everyone's got an opinion, but everyone's been so gracious with their time and opinion. So thank you, Geoff. I really appreciate your time. And obviously, thank you to everyone for watching. Obviously, like, share, subscribe. And until next time, for me and Geoff, take care, everybody, and stay safe. See you soon. Bye-bye.